When we talk about love, it's easy to assume that the feeling we experience is always deep and lasting. Yet, one of the most common confusions in human relationships is distinguishing between true love and mere attachment. Attachment is often mistaken for love because it comes with emotional intensity, desire for closeness, and even jealousy, all the markers we typically associate with romantic feelings. But love, in its psychological depth, is something more stable, balanced, and fundamentally oriented toward the other person's growth and well-being. From a psychological perspective, attachment is rooted in our need for security and comfort. We attach to people who provide stability, familiarity, and emotional reassurance. These feelings are natural and necessary. They help humans bond and survive. But attachment alone does not guarantee that our emotions are genuinely directed toward understanding, appreciating, or nurturing the other person as a separate individual. Often, attachment is more about ourselves than about the other. One clear way to observe whether what you feel is love or attachment is to look at how you respond to your partner's independence. In attachment, there is often a subtle, or sometimes obvious, need to control or influence the other person's choices, because their presence is tied to your emotional comfort. When someone we are attached to makes decisions that don't align with our desires, we may feel anxious, frustrated, or even resentful. Love, in contrast, allows space. It encourages individuality, growth, and even the freedom to explore life apart from each other. Psychologists often point out that attachment can be divided into different styles, which influence how we experience relationships. For instance, an anxious attachment style can make us clingy, seeking constant validation, whereas an avoidant style can lead to emotional distancing. In both cases, the focus is still more on managing one's own emotional state than on truly connecting with another person. Love, however, transcends these patterns. It is rooted in empathy, understanding, and a desire to support the other's journey without imposing our insecurities. Another distinction between love and attachment lies in how we react during conflicts. Attachment often triggers intense emotional swings, anger, fear, or anxiety when the relationship faces challenges. This is because attachment is heavily invested in maintaining a sense of security. The thought of losing the person, or even small disagreements, can feel threatening. Love, however, approaches conflicts differently. It allows room for dialogue, reflection, and compromise. While disagreements are inevitable, love sees them as opportunities for mutual understanding rather than threats to one's emotional safety. We can also examine our motivations. Are we with the person because they fulfill our needs, or because we genuinely enjoy nurturing and understanding them? Attachment is often self-focused. We cling to what makes us feel safe, validated, or satisfied. Love shifts the perspective outward, prioritizing the well-being of the other, sometimes even above our own comfort. This doesn't mean neglecting oneself, but rather balancing one's needs with those of the partner. It's a subtle yet profound difference that reveals the depth of emotional maturity. One practical way to test the nature of your feelings is to imagine life without the other person. Attachment often brings panic at the thought of separation, as if your emotional stability depends entirely on their presence. Love, on the other hand, allows you to envision a future where the person may not always be physically present, yet you feel a lasting sense of care, gratitude, and connection. It is less about fear of loss and more about appreciation of what the person brings into your life. Reflection and self-awareness play a crucial role in understanding this difference. Journaling your emotions, observing your reactions, and questioning your motives can reveal patterns of attachment versus love. Are your feelings dependent on immediate gratification, attention, or approval? Or are they enduring, patient, and tolerant of imperfections? Recognizing these patterns can help navigate relationships more consciously, preventing confusion and unnecessary suffering. Finally, understanding attachment versus love isn't about labeling or judging feelings. It's about increasing emotional clarity, fostering growth, and creating relationships that are more supportive and authentic. Love and attachment often coexist, but the quality of our interactions, the space we give each other, and the intentions behind our actions distinguish one from the other. Another way to differentiate love from attachment is to examine your emotional responses over time. Attachment can be intense at the beginning, often characterized by passion, excitement, and a sense of urgency. These feelings are highly stimulating and can feel overwhelming, creating the illusion of love. But as time passes, attachment can fade or reveal itself as frustration, dependency, or boredom. Love, however, tends to deepen gradually. It grows through shared experiences, understanding, and acceptance, even when initial excitement diminishes. True love maintains warmth, respect, and care, independent of constant emotional highs. It's also important to notice how attachment influences decision-making. When we are primarily attached, we may compromise our values, ignore red flags, or tolerate unhealthy behavior simply to maintain closeness. Love, in contrast, encourages healthy boundaries, honesty, and mutual respect. It supports growth without manipulation, and it recognizes that each person is responsible for their own happiness. Attachment can feel urgent, possessive, or fearful, while love feels steady, patient, and secure. Psychologists often emphasize the role of self-awareness in distinguishing these feelings. By observing our thoughts and behaviors, we can recognize when we are seeking reassurance versus when we genuinely appreciate the other person's individuality. For instance, asking yourself simple questions like, do I want them for who they are or for how they make me feel, can clarify your intentions. Love leans toward empathy, curiosity, and the desire to support the other person, while attachment leans toward comfort, safety, and self-interest. Attachment is not inherently bad. It is natural and necessary. It helps humans form bonds and survive emotionally. However, the challenge is to transform attachment into love, which requires conscious effort, emotional regulation, and willingness to see the other person fully. In many relationships, people begin with attachment and, through time, reflection, and growth, evolve toward love. This evolution is subtle and gradual, often requiring patience, honesty, and understanding from both partners. Finally, one of the most telling signs of love versus attachment is your response to independence. In attachment, distance can provoke anxiety, possessiveness, or jealousy. In love, distance is met with trust, respect, and sometimes even joy for the other person's achievements and experiences. Love encourages both closeness and freedom. Attachment clings and fears separation. Recognizing these dynamics in your relationships can help you navigate emotions wisely, fostering bonds that are healthier, more resilient, and genuinely fulfilling. At the end of the day, understanding whether what we feel is love or attachment requires honest self-reflection and careful observation of our emotions and actions. Love is characterized by patience, empathy, and an enduring respect for the other person's individuality. Attachment, on the other hand, is often reactive, focused on comfort, security, and self-centered needs. Recognizing the difference doesn't diminish the value of attachment. It simply allows us to grow emotionally and make wiser choices in relationships. One practical exercise is to reflect on your long-term feelings. When the initial excitement fades, does your care for the person persist? Do you still appreciate them for who they are? Or is your connection primarily based on how they make you feel? Love endures beyond the highs and lows. Attachment may falter when circumstances challenge your comfort or when independence is exercised. Communication and transparency are essential in this process. Discussing feelings with your partner, setting healthy boundaries, and observing mutual respect helps distinguish love from attachment in real time. Love thrives in an environment of trust, honesty, and shared growth, whereas attachment can create cycles of dependency, anxiety, and control. Recognizing these patterns is not about judgment, but about understanding human psychology and our emotional needs. It's also crucial to accept that many relationships contain elements of both love and attachment. Early stage relationships often start with attachment, and through time, patience, and conscious effort, attachment can evolve into genuine love. Awareness, reflection, and a willingness to confront one's insecurities are key to fostering this transformation. Finally, true love manifests in how you respond to both closeness and distance, joy and challenge, comfort and discomfort. Love does not demand constant validation or control. It allows for freedom while remaining grounded in care. Attachment, by contrast, often seeks to preserve emotional security at the cost of authenticity. By observing these patterns within ourselves, we can cultivate relationships that are emotionally mature, deeply satisfying, and resilient, and we can navigate life with a clearer understanding of what it truly means to love someone and to be loved in return. Beyond the patterns of attachment and love, it is essential to consider the role of self-growth in any relationship. True love encourages both partners to evolve individually and together. When attachment dominates, growth is often limited because one or both individuals focus on preserving comfort rather than exploring personal or shared potential. Love, however, nurtures curiosity, encourages personal development, and celebrates achievements, even those that occur independently of the relationship. Another aspect to consider is emotional resilience. Attachment can create vulnerability to constant emotional swings. Small disagreements or misunderstandings can trigger anxiety, frustration, or overreaction. Love, in contrast, fosters resilience. Even when conflicts arise or when life circumstances challenge the bond, love remains stable. It allows partners to navigate difficulties without fear of losing connection, and it encourages problem solving with empathy rather than avoidance or blame. A crucial sign of love versus attachment is how we perceive the other's happiness. Attachment often measures the relationship by personal satisfaction. Does this person make me feel good? Love shifts the focus. Am I contributing positively to this person's life? This outward orientation transforms the relationship from a self-serving dynamic into a shared journey. Love is patient, compassionate, and enduring, whereas attachment can be fleeting, conditional, or reactive. Ultimately, distinguishing love from attachment is less about labels and more about clarity and intentionality. By observing our emotions, reflecting on motivations, and practicing empathy, we can cultivate relationships that are genuinely fulfilling. Love, unlike attachment, grows in the space between closeness and independence, joy and challenge, intimacy and freedom. It is a dynamic, evolving process that requires awareness, patience, and authenticity. Recognizing this difference empowers us to make conscious choices, to nurture connections that support mutual growth, to release relationships rooted purely in dependency, and to embrace love in its deepest, most authentic form. In doing so, we not only improve our relationships with others, but we also deepen our understanding of ourselves, our emotional needs, and our capacity to give and receive love fully.